My stepfather's actions have had a profoundly negative impact on my life. He has made it clear that he believes my stepbrother deserves my fiancée more than I do. I would like to begin by offering my sincerest apologies for the length of this account. My father passed away when I was 15 years old. By that time, he and my mother had become distant, and while I was deeply affected by his death, she was not as visibly distraught as one might have expected. I joined the military at the age of 17. In my first year after leaving the family home, my mother remarried. I did not compete with my stepfather, our personalities were simply different. He would often make sarcastic remarks and tell me to man up about any inconvenience I would experience. This led to frequent disagreements between us, and I was often the one at fault, as he was for these disagreements. However, the situation never escalated. I was medically discharged after approximately 5 years. My mother and stepfather indicated that they would be amenable to my return to the household. I informed them that my stay would be brief, until I had established myself financially and obtained employment. I even offered to pay rent, but they declined. Approximately 3 days after my return, my stepfather, when alone with me, inquired about my plans. I was uncertain about the matter of rent, but it was his house, so we came to an agreement. I kept it from my mother, assuming that he did not want her to know, as he never mentioned it around her. I never asked for anything from them, not out of spite, but simply because I wanted to do things myself. He had a son from a previous marriage, and he and I did not share many common interests. We had no significant disagreements or issues. Our relationship was generally amicable. However, there was one notable exception. He received substantial financial support from his parents, including funding for his education, vehicle, and living expenses during his college years. I was approximately 1 year his senior, so he began college shortly after their marriage. I was reluctant to accept the help he was offering, but I felt somewhat guilty that he was receiving such extensive assistance while I was immediately asked for rent. I should note that I moved out after 3 months and shortly thereafter met a girl with whom I developed a strong romantic interest. We began dating, and I was extremely happy throughout the entire process. I would even say that I was experiencing the same level of excitement and joy that I had during my first relationship. However, the situation persisted. I was anxious about introducing her to my mother, as we were very close, and I was concerned that she might be critical of a potential girlfriend. My concerns proved to be unwarranted, as they got along extremely well. My girlfriend does not have a family of her own, and the relationship between her and my mother is a long and complex story. My mother and stepfather became like that for her. They established a strong rapport, to the point of spending time together exclusively. I was gratified by this development. My stepfather also expressed a positive regard for her, which I perceived as a unifying force between us. This was a sentiment I had not anticipated until I learned that he had become estranged from his own father during his upbringing. He subsequently assumed responsibility for supporting his family and financed his own education, ultimately attaining a commendable position. He secured employment on his own, which I held in high regard for approximately a year. I was convinced that this was the woman I would marry. I informed my mother and stepfather, who expressed great joy at the prospect. My mother gave me her engagement ring, which she had received from my father, and my girlfriend kept her previous job. The remuneration was not generous, so I assumed that even if the ring was not a substitute for the one I intended to give her, it would serve as a suitable interim gift. I proposed to my girlfriend, who informed me that it was not a placeholder and that she was delighted. I was genuinely happier than I had ever been before. We commenced wedding planning and my mother and stepfather indicated that they would assist with the financial aspects. This was the first occasion on which they had offered to provide financial assistance, and it was a greatly appreciated gesture. Fast-forwarding to approximately 3 months later, I received a telephone call from my stepfather, who informed me that I was required to attend his residence. I perceived the situation to be somewhat ominous, but upon my arrival at the residence, I observed my mother, stepfather, stepbrother, and fiancé. I immediately recognized that she had been crying, prompting me to inquire about the cause of her distress. However, my stepfather abruptly intervened, launching into a series of accusations regarding my alleged infidelity. I was perplexed by this turn of events and attempted to clarify my stance, emphasizing that I had never engaged in any form of romantic involvement with any woman other than my fiancée. It would appear that a female individual had obtained my fiancée's contact details and informed her that we had been engaging in an intimate relationship for over a year. However, she was unaware that I was in a committed relationship. She sent her screenshots of purported conversations and other information about me that a random person would not be aware of. I was like a fool and could not see what was happening in front of me. I was overwhelmed with shock, sadness, and anger. I pleaded with her from across the room to look at my phone. I had never engaged in any of the aforementioned activities. My mother and her mother were both in tears, and I began to shed tears as well. My stepfather called me every name he could think of and escorted me out of the house, informing me that if I were to return, he would call the police. I spent the next several weeks attempting to contact the police, but was unable to reach them. I sent text messages, left voicemails, and used every messaging app one could think of, but received no response. After those weeks, I received a call from my stepfather, who informed me that I was never welcome in his house or around his family again. He informed me that I was no longer permitted to contact her and that I was never welcome in his house or around his family again. I attempted to contact my mother regarding this matter, but received no response. After approximately 1 month, I received a text message from my mother expressing her sadness and disappointment. My mother did not have a large network of family members, so they typically spent holidays with my stepfather's family. Consequently, they also shunned me. I observed their Christmas pictures on social media. Facebook posts from my ex-fiancé indicated that he was present and appeared to be in good spirits, which caused me significant distress. The only family member who would communicate with me was my father's brother and his family. Despite this, even they seemed wary of me. The only individual who appeared to believe me was my uncle. I believe that I would not have survived without him. He demonstrated what I had been missing in paternal love, and I have never been more grateful for anyone. Approximately 6 months after the dissolution of my relationship, I relocated from the East Coast to California. I felt the need to escape the circumstances that had led to the end of my engagement. Approximately 1 year after my relocation, I received a call from an area code on the East Coast. I rarely received calls from that area code, so I picked up the phone. It was my stepbrother, whom I promptly ended the call with. He called me back, and I ignored the call, but the incident lingered in my mind throughout the day. I decided that if he called back again, I would answer the phone. He did. Later that night, the conversation was somewhat awkward. He informed me that my fiancée was experiencing significant distress. It took her nearly a year to even begin looking for a romantic partner. I had not done so since the end of our relationship, which occurred a few months earlier. My stepfather encouraged him to ask her on a date, which he did. The first few outings were relatively successful, but they did not result in a long-term relationship. Apparently, he informed my stepfather about this, and the latter's response was not helpful. I did not dismiss him without cause. She is a commendable individual, you must resolve this matter with her. I was on the verge of collapse, and my anger was swiftly replaced by a sense of bewilderment. It would appear that he had initiated a romantic relationship with another woman, and he had forged screenshots of messages to be sent to my fiancée. He informed me that he had confided in him about a month ago, but he was unsure of the best course of action. It was evident that the information had caused him considerable distress. He was unable to remain silent any longer and informed me of the situation. He stated that he would be disclosing the information to my mother and fiancée the following day. He contacted me first as a courtesy, so that he would be prepared to discuss the matter with them. I informed him of my current location and requested that they not contact me immediately, as I needed time to process the information. This occurred last Tuesday. I have since sent him a text message indicating my willingness to speak with them if they wish to do so. It is uncertain whether I will receive a call from them tomorrow. I am unsure of what I will say or what they will say. I anticipate that there will be tears and apologies, among other things. I am uncertain if I am prepared to forgive them or to accept their apologies. I have only told one person, my uncle, who I have asked to keep this information confidential. I apologize for the length of this update. My therapist's vacation schedule and my need to vent have contributed to the delay. A more comprehensive update will be provided later tonight. As of yet, no further calls have been received from other individuals. However, a positive conversation with my stepbrother was held, which was a welcome change. I am grateful for the support expressed by many. I will endeavor to address all comments in due course. On February 6, 2023, my stepfather's actions resulted in a rift between my family. I apologize for the delay in providing this update. I have been preoccupied with work and other matters. My stepbrother contacted me earlier today. This morning, he informed me of the events that transpired over the past week. It became evident that the information provided by my stepfather was not entirely accurate. My stepbrother clarified that he had been cautious in his choice of words to avoid incriminating himself. He was able to identify the specific actions that my stepfather had taken without explicitly stating what they were. My stepbrother's actions have led me to question my perception of him. I have come to recognize that he possesses a greater degree of intelligence than I initially assumed. Instead of simply approaching my mother and fiancé with this information, he took the initiative to investigate further. Instead of engaging in a heated verbal confrontation with his father, he took a different approach. He obtained his ex-partner's mobile phone and discovered that she had been unfaithful. He then contacted her and arranged to meet her in a public place. This was the point at which the truth came to light. The woman in question was a Tinder match with my stepfather, which suggests that he had been engaging in extramarital affairs. This information was particularly distressing to me. For reasons that are evident, the girl in question asserts that they did not engage in sexual intercourse. However, whether this is indeed the case is of no consequence to me. What is of consequence is that my stepbrother spoke with her and evoked her emotions with the story and the circumstances that had transpired. In summary, she was aware of her actions. It is possible that the time and the events that transpired with me had a profound impact on her, but this is of no consequence to me. She informed him of the events in question. The agreed-upon price for the phone call was $1,000. My stepbrother instructed her on what to say and provided the evidence in the form of photographs. She made the call and that was the end of it. My stepbrother then asked her if she could tell my mother and ex-wife, and even offered to pay her again. She agreed to do so for free. This occurred yesterday. My stepfather is on a business trip until Wednesday, so it was not possible for him to be involved. The 4 individuals present were informed of the situation by the aforementioned individual. The information was conveyed to my mother and ex-stepfather, who were visibly distressed. The individual in question informed them that I was in California and that he would inform them when I wanted to be contacted. This information was provided before I sent him a brief message to provide some context regarding my mother and ex-stepfather. My fiancé and I are not attempting to justify their actions, we are merely attempting to provide some context for those who are unfamiliar with my mother and I. After my father's passing, my mother and I became inseparable. When I turned 16, I began drinking to cope with the loss. I informed my mother that we would spend New Year's together. At the age of 16, I engaged in alcohol consumption with my companions to the extent that I was inebriated. I received a text message from my mother, who had spent the night at home alone. This was the first time that we had been separated since my father's passing. My mother expressed her sadness and loneliness, and I felt a sense of overwhelming distress. I decided to cease consuming alcohol that day. Until the dissolution of her marriage, she was the type of person who required the company of others. I believe that when her relationship with my father began to deteriorate, I filled that void. Subsequently, when I left home and subsequently formed relationships with other individuals, my stepfather and then my ex-partner fulfilled that role. She has no family and has experienced significant trust issues as a result of her past relationships. Despite this, she has never spoken negatively about her former partners. One of them was physically abusive, and I consider that an exception. I have been frequently informed that I am attractive, particularly by younger females, who are younger than me and not children. I have never been particularly fond of this designation, as it does not align with my masculine identity. However, I have come to accept it and have learned to appreciate my youthful appearance and the frequent blushing that occurs. My fiancé, on the other hand, I am 3 years shy of my partner's age. I have always been more attracted to older women and have not given much thought to the younger women who seem to like me because they were of an age that I consider to be inappropriate. This did not stop the attention that I received, which upset my partner. She often asked why I was not interested in these women and why I did not leave her. For someone younger and more attractive, I found her to be extremely attractive, significantly more attractive than me. I would often reiterate this to her, and that I never cared about any other girl. I apologize for deviating from the topic at hand. I hope that this provides some insight into my thoughts on their actions and beliefs. I do not intend for this to be an excuse for them, nor do I fully comprehend their perspective. At the conclusion of the telephone conversation with my brother, he informed me that they both wished to call that day. I informed him that it would be acceptable, so I waited by the telephone for approximately 3 hours. 0.0 I was somewhat perplexed. I began to suspect that he had fabricated the entire incident as a means of provoking me. This concern was genuine. I received a text message from him inquiring about my well-being. I replied that I was fine and inquired about the likelihood of a call from them. He informed me that they had been attempting to reach me for the past several hours. I had previously blocked both individuals when I relocated to the western region of the country. I was unsure as to why I had not blocked him. I am grateful that I did not, but I subsequently unblocked them both and received a call from my mother approximately 10 minutes later. She commented that I sounded different, and I was on the verge of hanging up. However, I managed to maintain my composure and continued the conversation. I replied in the affirmative, and she immediately broke down. I was not expecting to feel anything, but the pain of the situation overwhelmed me. I was surprised to find that her words did not elicit a stronger emotional response. She inquired whether I had received her text messages. I informed her that I had not, and she seemed disappointed. I had her number blocked for approximately a year, but she could have reached me if she had wanted to. I informed her that I was willing to rebuild a relationship with her over time, and she was satisfied with this arrangement. Additionally, she informed me that she was attempting to procure all of her essential belongings from the residence before her stepfather's return and was prepared to file for divorce immediately. I believe her assertion. While I may consider her to be a suboptimal mother, she has never been one to take a passive approach. I would be interested in observing the proceedings. Upon his return to an empty home, my ex proceeded to make the same tearful apologies as my mother had done. I felt a greater sense of empathy with her, and attempted to persuade her to consider the numerous instances in which I had assured her that I would never act in such a manner and express my profound love for her. I am gratified that we spoke for approximately half an hour. I found the conversation agreeable. Despite having informed myself for over a year that such an occurrence would never recur, I was surprised to discover that there might still be a possibility for us. She informed me that she still possessed the ring, which caused me considerable distress. I requested that she transfer ownership to my mother, as it was evident that it no longer belonged to either of us. I could discern that this information caused her considerable distress, and I admit that I was somewhat selfish in my desire to retain possession of the ring. She inquired as to whether she could contact me by telephone or text message. I informed her that it was acceptable, but that I would not be able to respond promptly, regardless of the circumstances. She understood my position and agreed to it. She exhibited the same ultimate regard for him as my mother, though I informed her that the likelihood of a future romantic relationship between us was minimal. She concurred, acknowledging the unlikelihood of such a relationship. I then spoke with my brother, expressing my gratitude for his assistance in facilitating the relocation of my mother's belongings from her father's residence. He apologized for the unfortunate circumstances and informed me that he intended to inform the rest of the family about the situation. I have no connection to these individuals and will not disclose any information to them, except for my stepfather's mother, the eldest member of the family. She extended her best wishes for my birthday and Christmas, and expressed her hope for my well-being. The Christmas period may have passed without her expressing any particular interest. Alternatively, she may have been experiencing a sense of discomfort. Regardless of the reason, I will discuss the matter with her. It is worth noting that I will be returning home for my uncle's 60th birthday, which falls in the first week of March. This will be my first visit home since I relocated here. I intend to see my brother as well. I am not averse to seeing my mother and former partner, but I have made it clear to them that I have a great deal of healing to do, and they have a similar need. Should anything further occur, I will provide an update. It is possible that I will do so after my return home, but that is not certain at this time. This is the last social media account I have. I have not been on here frequently in the last year for the reasons that I am sure you can guess. I have not seen any similar stories to mine that have been referenced in the comments. However, I would be happy to answer any questions anyone may have regarding this matter. To the best of my knowledge, I am able to provide a comprehensive overview of the situation. On February 8th, I received a call from a number that I recognized as being from back home. I had deleted most of my numbers from anyone I was not currently in communication with. I picked up the call and it was the individual in question is my stepfather. He telephoned me and I terminated the call. I then blocked his number. I immediately contacted my mother, fiancé, and brother. They are all safe and not in his vicinity. My mother is staying in a hotel that he is unaware of. My fiancé and brother are at their residences and both say they feel adequately protected. He is not, by any indication, a violent man. However, it is prudent to err on the side of caution. My brother received a call from him this morning when he got home after my mother was not there and would not answer. My brother informed him of the situation and instructed him not to contact any of them. I am unsure how long he sat there, but he called me around 3 o'clock. 0.0 I received a message from a different number approximately an hour ago, stating that we needed to speak. I assume that this was from him. I have not yet responded, as this is the latest brief update. On the 29th, my stepfather's mother called me. She had my number saved because of what I previously stated. She expressed some concern that it might have been him trying to gather information. However, she is a very sweet lady who did not have to be nice to me in any way. However, she has demonstrated compassion. She was cordial and wished me well, while also apologizing on behalf of the family. I thanked her and wished her the best. I was taken aback by the fact that he had come from that woman. I informed my stepfather of the situation, which resulted in my family turning against me. I apologize for the delay. I have been extremely busy at work and only just got home this past weekend. I had been waiting to respond to the message from my stepfather, which I had assumed was from him. My curiosity led me to call him. I did, as some had suggested, record the call using a different app. I wish I could say the call provided me with some insight, but that would be disingenuous. Hearing his voice made me feel uneasy. He asked how I was. I told him to cut it, and he laughed. There was nothing incriminating on his end, of course. The conversation lasted approximately 3 minutes and covered a range of topics. I did ask him a question. He expressed discontent with my relationship with her, stating that I was not sufficiently masculine and that a woman like her would have been a poor match for me. His views on relationships are notably traditional, which is particularly amusing given his lack of knowledge about our relationship and her in general. Without going into detail, my ex, is openly opposed to conventional gender norms. She informed me that she would never be at ease with the prospect of being a homemaker. She frequently assumed the role of primary decision-maker in our relationship. There was little to glean from the conversation other than the fact that I was unsure of his intentions. I advised him not to contact me further and terminated the call. The interaction was relatively uneventful. I returned home prior to the weekend in question and attended my uncle's birthday celebration. I had a positive experience. The family was welcoming and expressed regret for their lack of support. They were never discourteous, and I hold no negative sentiments towards them. I discussed the matter with my brother and arranged a meeting at his residence with my ex-partner and mother on Wednesday evening. On Wednesday, I proceeded to the meeting and observed the anticipated display of emotion and contrition. I found it challenging to maintain composure. I engaged in separate conversations with both my mother and my brother. My mother has already initiated divorce proceedings, which is beneficial. We had a constructive discussion. It was evident that the situation was somewhat unusual, but I perceived that we were making progress towards healing. My brother and I had a productive conversation. It was beneficial to speak with him in person. He expressed remorse for his actions and I accepted his apology. I am not holding a grudge against my ex. We had a lengthy discussion throughout the night, which had been preceded by several weeks of telephone conversations. A significant portion of our conversation was devoted to catching up on recent developments. After nearly a year and a half, we engaged in more serious discussions about the circumstances surrounding our separation. We discussed the emotional distress caused by the dissolution of our relationship and the difficulties we had encountered in our attempts to rebuild our lives. She informed me that she had already consulted with a therapist and inquired as to my willingness to accompany her to her appointment on Thursday. She has demonstrated remarkable dedication and commitment throughout this process, going above and beyond what I could have reasonably expected. I accompanied her to her therapy appointment, which proved to be a highly productive experience for all involved. The therapist's demeanor indicated that I had made a valuable contribution to the session. We also met with her therapist, who was very appreciative of my presence. After the appointment, we stayed talking for a while. I decided to ask if she wanted to go out Saturday night, and that is the plan for now. I am uncertain of the specifics of what will happen, but I wanted to show her that I appreciate the effort she is putting in to try to mend the damage caused by our past actions. I would also like to see her in a setting that is not like the ones we have been in, for selfish reasons. This is the current status of the situation. Upon returning home, I have not yet seen my stepfather or his family. I would like to express my gratitude to everyone for their support. I will provide updates as new information becomes available. The 35th anniversary date was a success. We had a pleasant evening together, enjoying dinner and an arcade visit. This is the first date I have been on in nearly a year and a half, and I found it enjoyable. We returned to her place afterwards to discuss future plans. The next steps include a period of adjustment during this week before I return to California. The challenge of maintaining a long-distance relationship will be significant, but I believe it will help to keep the rose-colored glasses off if we do not become overly dependent on each other. I would like to express my gratitude once again for the support from everyone. Update 710. Many individuals have expressed interest in receiving further updates. I have maintained communication with my brother, mother, and former brother, and we still engage in regular conversations. My mother and I have been rebuilding our relationship. I am pleased to report that we have made significant progress. While it will take time for her to fully resume her role as a mother figure in my life, I am grateful for the opportunity to reconnect with her. My former partner and I spent a considerable amount of time attempting to determine the most effective approach to our situation. She flew out to California and spent time with me, which was a positive experience. However, we have decided to take a break from our relationship for the time being. I believe this is the best course of action for the present. Regarding my former partner, my stepfather attempted to contact my mother on several occasions following the events in question. However, he was unable to speak with her. He has not been in contact with her since. I am grateful for this. I hope that I will never have to encounter him again. Life changes. I relocated to the east for a new job, which was several states away from my family. I believe this was a healthy decision. I am happy to answer any further questions you may have. Thank you for your support during this challenging period.